We are surrounded and inundated with news about crime happening all the time. I'm your host, Leah.
I'm Phil.
And I'm Steve. Today we'll be discussing some of the strangest aspects of crime and bizarre laws, so lock your doors, set the alarm, and get comfortable.
If you have an appetite for the strange and bizarre, then pull up a chair and grab a spoon for another intriguing serving of Remnant Stew. Remnant Stew is gluten-free, organic, made from all natural, free-range ingredients, and guaranteed to provide the recommended daily serving of curiosity.
I am a fanatic about true crime. I read about it, watch it on TV, and listen to podcasts about it. And if you ever need any recommendations about great true crime podcasts, hit me up on social media. We've gathered several crazy crime stories and trivia about weird laws for you today.
That's right. Now, let's talk about some strange laws first. We might call this law lunacy here. Every country is different, and every country's laws are different. Sometimes these laws border on the seriously ridiculous, and other times they point to important cultural values that might be different from your own. Today, during our discussion of all things legal and bizarre, we will be mixing in several examples of odd laws from around the world. For these examples, we are drawing on a terrific article from our friend Lisa Poirot called 60 Weird Laws Around the World from farandwide.com. Now, you might remember we quoted one of her articles a few months ago in our episode about strange geography. So once again, we are grateful to Ms. Poirot for allowing us to quote directly from her fine article.
And if you're looking for a podcast to sponsor.
That's right. So let's start with a few odd laws. And, you know what? This one has been gotten some notoriety in the media lately. In the small island country of Singapore, it's illegal to chew gum. Completely illegal to chew gum.
I'm with them.
Sometimes we all suffer when fools break the rules. After vandals used chewing gum to mess with the mass transit system, and the Housing and Development Board spent $150,000 a year to clean gum litter, Singapore banned all gum substances in 1992.
So they gummed up the tracks.
That's right.
My gosh.
Anyone importing, selling, or making gum in Singapore can get fined and or jail time, with the exception of nicotine and dental gums offering therapeutic value. So don't get caught blowing bubbles in Singapore. Remember about 30 years ago when that American teenager got caned for tagging in Singapore?
Yeah. And Singapore is not exactly where I'd want to do jail time.
No, I'm thinking no. Nice people, good place, but very tight society there. Now, going up north of the border, I like this one. Canadian radio stations must play Canadian artists. That's right. The Canadians, they're a patriotic bunch. Such a beautiful country. So much so that all Canadian radio stations are required by law to play Canadian artists on the airwaves at least 35% of the time, especially during the hours of 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. This means that in an hour of radio during the work week, you will hear more than 20 minutes of artists like Nickelback, Alanis Morissette, Celine Dion, Michael Bublé, and Justin Bieber, all of whom are proud Canucks. So, they look after their own up there in Canada.
There you go.
Now, going across to Europe, many people have heard about the famous Autobahn in Germany, where you basically have no speed limit. But here is something there is a law related to the Autobahn. It is illegal to run out of gas on the Autobahn. Notorious for having dynamic speed limits that give drivers a chance to travel more than 100 miles per hour, car enthusiasts and speed demons love trips along the German Autobahn. But if you run out of gas, you could be in for a big fine. And don't even think of walking to a gas station, or you'll get another fine for that. Why? Germans believe that you have the power to keep your car properly gassed up. So if you run out of gas, it's your own fault.
It's all in your own pocket.
Walking along the highway is unsafe, as is having your vehicle stalled on the side of the road. So watch that tank, Dummkopf. I was watching Little Hogan's Heroes the other night. I'm sorry. Keep your eyes on your gas gauge and fill her up when you get low.
I know that my husband's going to be rolling his eyes when he hears this, because I'm the one that I take it all the way down to the last drop. But I have never run out of gas. So now my husband got into my car, pulled out of the driveway, and ran out of gas before.
But you weren't driving.
But
so
it wasn't me.
You.
You live kind of far out of town too, don't you, Sue?
That's right.
So they roll it down the hill.
Yeah, a little bit away from the greater cut and shoot area. You better make sure you're full before you go home. Okay, now, nearby Germany, this is an interesting one. It is illegal to hike naked in Switzerland.
Can we just have that everywhere?
Yes.
Come on, put some clothes on.
It's dangerous to hike
I would think
naked.
so, yeah. After Swiss and German travelers decided to make naked hiking a thing back in Switzerland about 10 years ago, I mean, that really happened. Swiss officials reminded folks that public indecency laws still exist, and you can be fined if caught in the woods in the buff. In fact, in 2011, a Swiss man was fined more than $100 for his bare-bottom walk. So keep your clothes on in Switzerland on those hiking trails.
Can you imagine looking for a job and they do a background
Yeah.
check?
You got busted for what?
What? What are you in for? What? Now, I have to tell you, I actually broke this law unknowingly. It's illegal to feed pigeons in Venice, Italy.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the hiking.
No, not that one.
Not an image I need to think there, Steve.
If I did, it was certainly unknowingly because I didn't know about it. But this one, I did it, but didn't realize it was illegal. With thousands of pigeons descending upon St. Mark's Square in Venice, lured by the tourists readily handing out food in exchange for Instagram-worthy photos, Venice lawmakers officially made it illegal to feed the pigeons in 2008. It is said that the cleanup from the birds cost each citizen €275 per year, so now the tables are turned. If you're caught feeding the pigeons, you could face fines of up to €700. So you better get the picture-perfect shot of Venice's beautiful sights, beautiful bridges, instead of their pigeons.
I don't even know why you would want to photograph pigeons. Those are everywhere.
Well, I know. And I didn't intend to feed them. We were there in 2015, and when we arrived at a pretty crowded St. Mark's Square, this fellow comes up to me and he thrusts this kind of a crumbly meal into my hands, like cornmeal or something. I immediately dropped it, and the pigeons descended upon it. Then he wanted me to pay him for it, which I did not do. So I didn't know I was breaking the law, and I'm glad I didn't get caught.
It's surprising that he didn't turn you in.
Yeah, right. Hey, pointed to me.
Okay, so this next one isn't quite so funny.
Uh-oh.
I'm a fan, like I said, of true crime in almost any form. And so I came across this unbelievable YouTube video, and I knew I had to talk about it on the podcast. Ryan Waller and Heather Kwan were a couple living together in a rental home in Desert Hills, Arizona. In 2006, Ryan and Heather were expected to spend Christmas Day with Ryan's dad, but they just never showed up, and it was very uncharacteristic for them.
Right.
So after trying to contact the couple by phone and not getting any answer, Ryan's dad became concerned and called the local police and asked for a welfare check. I think they lived maybe 50 miles from each other, where it wasn't real convenient for him to pop over, but not too far away. Anyway, the police arrived at the house. They knocked on the door for several minutes and with no answer. Finally, the door was unlocked and opened by Ryan, who just stood there in the doorway without saying a word.
Mm.
The police noticed a huge bruise on the left side of his face, swelling his eyes shut, and a cut on his nose. Police then looked past Ryan and saw a woman lying on the couch, which they presumed was Heather. And they were right, it was Heather. After asking Ryan about the situation with his face being bruised and if it was Heather on the couch, but getting no answer from Ryan, police made their way inside to check on Heather. Ryan told them that Heather was asleep, but they could clearly see that Heather was dead and had been for at least a couple days. She had a single gunshot wound to her head. Ryan was arrested immediately and put into the back of the police car. He didn't resist arrest, but kept insisting that he didn't understand what was going on or what had happened to Heather. He still kept saying that she was just asleep.
Yeah.
Ryan stayed in the back of the police car for hours while a crime unit was called in to process the scene and paramedics came to transport Heather's body to the morgue. Eventually, early in the morning, Ryan was taken to the police station to be interviewed. You can look up Ryan Waller's police interview on YouTube and see for yourself that it's one of the most incredible police interrogations ever on video. Ryan was put into a small interrogation room at 5:08 a.m. The video shows that Ryan's barefoot. He's wearing some kind of white jumpsuit, I think that was given to him or something.
Yeah.
And he's not handcuffed. He's left alone for several minutes, and during that time, Ryan notices a pair of handcuffs attached to the table. He places the other restraint around his wrist and clicks it into place, just essentially handcuffing himself to the table. A few minutes later, he's seen standing up and trying to walk to the door, and he's surprised that he's restrained. He sits back down and waits. You can hear him occasionally let out a moan. Then a detective comes in, and the interview starts with basic questions about Ryan's name and birthday, and when Ryan is asked if he understands why he's being interrogated, he says no. That's the point at which the officer reads Ryan his rights. He seems very confused at this.
Right.
The officer continues with more basic questions, but Ryan keeps saying, I don't know. Then when he's pressed, he would change his answer to something else, trying to kind of appease the officer.
Right.
The interview is obviously not going to plan, and both Ryan and the officer are confused and frustrated with each other, with Ryan continually saying he just wants to go home. Finally, the questioning gets around to Ryan's relationship with Heather. Ryan agreed that he knew Heather, but he didn't know how old she was, what her last name was. The officer changes tactics and starts asking about what happened to Ryan's face. He's first told that he was in an accident of some sort. Then Ryan started throwing out random information that sometimes contradicted itself. Eventually, he slowly tells a story that 2 people were in his house and shot him in the face and Heather in the head. The details of the story keep changing, though. Frustrated and trying to get Ryan to focus, the officer tells Ryan point blank that there is a dead girl in your house. Ryan reacted with surprise. Then he asks if it's Heather. The officer just doesn't know how to deal with this, and he keeps asking Ryan for more information on what happened. Ryan then said Richie and his dad came over and were shooting bows and arrows. He then changed the story to say that they had revolvers and that both he and Heather were shot. The officer just seems incredulous.
Right, not getting a straight answer out of
Yeah,
it.
and frustrated with the ever-changing story. I mean, because, there's tactics to interrogation, but this is like nothing is going to plan, right? And so he's frustrated with how uncooperative Ryan is.
Yeah.
The convoluted story was so strange, and the officer starts to really put pressure on Ryan, who keeps saying that the people had shot him in the eye. One thing Ryan keeps saying is that he got shot first before Heather. He was shot in the eye, then Heather was shot while she was on the couch, and Ryan thought he would just let Heather sleep. At this point, the officer insists to Ryan that the story is made up. He says that Ryan was shot in the head with a revolver, then there's no way he would be answering questions. He would be dead. Ryan says, that's what I thought too, man. I really don't know.
Uh-huh.
The interview had been going on for about 45 minutes, and the officer is at a loss. He just can't get Ryan to focus and make sense as he's sitting there wondering what line of questioning he should try next, as he takes a good look at Ryan and notices something he hadn't seen before. He gets Ryan to come closer, and the officer inspects Ryan's face close up and notices a hole in the left side of his nose.
Wow.
Ryan says that his head hurts. The officer then quickly leaves the room and comes back with medics. Ryan is then rushed to the hospital for the gunshot wounds in his face.
Wow.
Yep. 2 days ago, 2 days before Christmas, 23-year-old Richie Carver and his 54-year-old father, Larry Carver, showed up to Ryan's house to settle a dispute that they had with Ryan and Heather. Richie used to live in the house with them, but then started showing attention to Heather, like unwanted and persistent attention to Heather, so they kicked him out of the house. That was a couple weeks ago, and Richie was furious. So he and his father came back to the house to exact revenge. They shot Ryan in the face as they broke in, just as soon as he opened the door. They assumed he was dead. Richie then fired a single shot into Heather's head, killing her instantly. The men burglarized the place and left. Ryan woke up several hours later. He had severe trauma to his brain and was more or less on autopilot. He thought Heather was asleep, so he left her alone, and for the next 2 days, Ryan just aimlessly spent time walking around his house during the day and sleeping in his bed at night. He continued to think Heather was just sleeping on the couch. Then finally, on the evening of Christmas Day, the police came by to do the welfare check. Ryan spent 2 days at home with a bullet and skull fragments lodged in his brain, then 6 hours in a cop car, then almost 2 more hours at the police station before finally being taken to the hospital. He underwent life-saving surgery but had to have his left eye removed along with a large portion of his brain.
Oh, man.
There was so much brain damage that he was no longer independent and had to move back in with his parents. About 10 years later, Ryan died from a seizure that was the direct result from the wounds he had received from the attack and the lack of care he got, or did not get, actually, during those first few days. Richie Carver and Larry Carver were tried and convicted for their crimes against Ryan and Heather. Both were sentenced to life in prison.
Wow.
And again, you can look that up on YouTube.
Wow.
It is, it's just amazing to see that he's functioning. He's
Right.
absolutely functioning and talking and walking around, but he's
didn't
very
know what
confused.
was going on.
Yeah, that's
That
right.
would be really frightening. And then the police are trying to say, you walk in, you would assume the woman's dead in your house. You've got a bruise. Must have been a fight. And you shot her,
and I don't think I mentioned that, but yeah, they were saying that she must have hit him.
Mhm.
She must have fought back.
Yeah.
And
That's what it would look like. Yeah.
Yeah.
So wow, interesting story and sad story.
Hmm.
Well, let's transition from a sad story back to some more strange laws. Yeah, it's illegal to wear high heels to the Acropolis. So make sure when you make your pack your bag for your next trip to Greece, you want to make sure you have the right shoes. The country banned high heels at the Acropolis in 2009, so no stilettos at the Parthenon. Not sure why anyone would want to make a trek around the ruins in dirt and heels. Surely it's tough to walk in and it would damage the shoes, but the Greeks put the ban in place to protect the ruins from damage caused by the sharp heels.
From being chipped away.
Yeah, the ruins are nearly 2,500 years old, so be respectful and wear some soft-soled shoes when you visit. And even then, you have to be careful, as I learned on that same trip in 2015. Same trip to Italy. I also went to Greece. Well, of course, I wasn't wearing high heels. Well, I do have some, don't I? I brought them up here one day.
Well, those aren't classified. Those are platform
big old
heels.
platform shoes, yeah. Well, they were high anyway. Anyway, I did get fussed at by a docent while walking up the zigzag path that led up the hill because, well, I sort of cut across the point of one of the switchbacks, you see. And so not only can you not wear high heels, you have to be careful to stay on the paths. So, yeah, I kind of cut across the corner a little bit. And, yeah, she said, I got shushed.
Don't
and
do
point,
that.
My finger waved at me. Well, now, when you take your next trip to Poland, make sure you don't pack along your Winnie the Pooh T-shirt.
Okay.
The cuddly little bear all stuffed with fluff also, gasp, doesn't wear pants.
It's a bear.
Because of this, Poland issued a ban on Winnie the Pooh around playgrounds and schools, finding the A.A. Milne character a little too risque for the likes of impressionable children.
Okay.
It's okay for shirts.
Best to leave your
pants.
bear attire at home if you're visiting this Eastern European country just to be safe.
What about Donald Duck?
Yeah, he doesn't wear pants either.
Yeah.
That's
is true.
right. But,
But he's a duck.
He's a duck, I guess.
And Winnie is
Winnie's a bear.
He's a Pooh Bear.
I guess. Now, I like this one. It's illegal to ride a cow while drunk in Scotland.
That is such
Now,
a Scottish
Yeah.
thing.
East
It-
or
it-
Texas.
It doesn't clear. It doesn't
True.
say anything.
Yeah, it could be Texas.
It doesn't say anything about whether the cow can be drunk or not. It's
It just
the
says the
rider
rider should
herself.
not be.
The cow. They have those cows in Scotland that have the long, kind of hairy faces. Highland coos, they call them. Well, anyway, before you get any crazy ideas and have too much Scotch whiskey, you should know how to that you could get a ticket for drunk cow riding. Technically, the full 1872 law mandates people not be drunk when in charge of a cow, horse, carriage, or steam engine. Probably a pretty handy law, and come to think of it. The predecessor of our DWI laws. In case you were wondering, the same law states you cannot have a loaded firearm while you are drunk. And riding your cow. So that's probably a pretty good rule.
Yeah, I would say so. Okay, so when we moved to our house where we live now, 20 some odd years ago, there was a man down the street who had lost his license for drunk driving.
Yeah.
So he needed to get to the liquor store down the street.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So he would either hitchhike with one of the neighbors or he would ride his riding lawnmower down to the liquor store.
That'll get you there.
That's right.
Just don't turn the blades on.
Yeah. Now, this is kind of an interesting one. It's illegal to wear camouflage in many Caribbean islands.
Because they can't see you coming?
Well, no, leave the camo attire at home when you head to the Caribbean. To wear it is a big no-no in many island nations, including Barbados, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Antigua, Barbuda, and Jamaica. Camouflage is only allowed to be worn by the country's military personnel, so they don't want people being
that
mistaken.
makes sense.
All right.
That makes sense.
Now, on your next trip to Sri Lanka, you want to make sure you don't take a selfie with a statue of Buddha because that's illegal there. When you take a selfie with Buddha, you are turning your back on him. That's a no-no. This sign of disrespect is punishable by imprisonment in Sri Lanka, and it's also considered disrespectful to point your finger at Buddha, and sometimes there are bans on taking photos with him at all. Although not illegal to have tattoos of Buddha, a British woman was jailed for 3 days in 2014 for an inappropriate tattoo of Buddha.
We will not,
We're not
have
asking.
that picture on social media.
Yeah. So anyway, be polite, cover tattoos, respect, no photograph signs, and don't turn your back on Buddha in Sri Lanka.
Okay, so when was the last time you wrote a check?
A couple of days ago.
Are you serious?
Don't write them very often.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I carry a few checks in my purse for the odd occasion when I
Yeah.
need to pay somebody
Yeah,
that
it's
doesn't do
very
electronic
odd.
banking.
One
but,
monthly bill I paid by check. Yeah.
I've had the same checkbook for years, though.
Right.
I do deal with checks a lot more at my job where I'm an office manager and bookkeeper, but if at all possible, I try to pay bills online.
Right.
So checks are definitely on the decline. So I was absolutely just surprised to find that we had a couple fraudulent checks come through our corporate account. Then a week later, 2 more came through. And as far as I could tell, someone intercepted one of our vendor payments in the mail, opened it, made a copy, then placed it back in the envelope and sent it on its way. So it's like mail fraud is what has
Mail
happened.
fraud. Yeah.
I asked the bank if this happens a lot, and they said, it does.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. And creating fraudulent checks, as well as other scams, have been on the rise due to the, economic upheaval of the pandemic.
Right.
But back a couple years ago,
A couple of decades ago. Yeah.
Right.
a couple years ago in 1988, there was a completely different and intriguing type of crime involving checks. There were several weeks when a swindler managed to defraud banks out of almost $70,000 across 6 banks
Wow.
in 2 states by depositing self-destructing checks.
Wow. You mean they would this message will self-destruct?
Mission
That's right. That's
Impossible
what it.
Mission Impossible?
That's what it makes
Awesome.
me
Wow.
think of. Is this little
This check will self-destruct, man.
That's right. This explosion of a puff of smoke. And the teller would have a black soot-coated face, her hair all wigged out, right? But
We
that's
watched
just
too many Looney Tunes.
that's
Carter.
right. Too much Looney Tunes or Three Stooges.
Yeah.
Anyway, the checks were actually coated with a chemical shortly before being deposited that caused them to disintegrate into confetti about
Wow.
3 or 4 hours later. According to a March 1988 Associated Press article, quote, in most of the cases, someone would open a new bank account at a bank with a small amount of money, later make a larger deposit with a dissolving check. Then the money would be withdrawn from the account before the bank could learn that the second check was bogus.
Oh, wow.
The check's decomposition would leave little room for evidence, or little evidence, basically. It was believed that more than one person was involved, but no one was ever caught, and
Really?
I couldn't find any mention of the authorities figuring out exactly what
Who did
chemical
it?
was
Oh, yeah.
used or who did it.
I wouldn't really release that either.
Oh, true. It said that the checks seemed slightly oily and had a smell to them, so it was an operation that would only work until the word was out. Like
Right.
you could only
Yeah.
hit
Don't
it
take-
quick and then leave it
Yeah.
alone, right?
Don't take any oily checks. I had a situation once, and for some reason, I used to be kind of lax about locking my pickup truck and also leaving my checkbook in my pickup truck. And I had I was living in an apartment one time up in Seattle, and somebody got into my truck and took one check out, and somehow I noticed it right away because I realized that I had
The numbers were off.
Yeah, and so I went right to my bank to change the account. While I'm there, the guy goes to a different branch of the bank and tries to cash a check that he pulled out for $30. Wrote himself a check for $30 and tried to cash it. And I said, "That's the guy! Stop him!" And they arrested him right there on the spot.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Pretty amazing.
$30. Like, how long ago was this? The 1920s?
91, yeah. So I don't know why
It
he
was
won
the
for $30.
test check.
But yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
All right. That makes sense. It was a
the
test check. I mean, if you're going to, you need to go big
Yeah.
or go home.
He thought it would go unnoticed, I suppose. So
Well, you know what? A lot of credit card, when you do credit card scams, people they do that. They do
They
a
do
little.
amounts,
initial
yeah.
span just to see, and then next
Yeah.
thing you know, they're gone.
So a good
Interesting.
idea is to set a notification. I have my kids do this with their bank accounts. Set a notification for any transaction over a certain amount.
right.
Yep.
And I get it like immediately as I'm, like I'll pay for it at the cash register and walk out of the store. And by the time I get to my car, I have
Right.
an email. So it's a good idea.
Yeah.
There you go.
And now for something completely off topic and off kilter. Brace yourself for the oddity du jour.
All right, for our oddity today, I'm not sure I've mentioned it before, but I actually grew up raising sheep. I told y'all that already.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah,
Out in the hill
up
country.
in the Texas Hill
Steve the
Country.
sheep
My
herder.
hometown of Kerrville is in the heart of the Texas Hill Country and is prime sheep and goat country. In fact, there are so many sheep and goats that at one time city leaders sought to brand our town as, quote, the mohair capital of the world.
Now, there's a designation for you. Where are you from? Well,
Oh, yeah.
let me tell you.
Mohair. I don't recall how far they got in their efforts, but it raised my interest in towns seeking to glorify themselves by claiming to be the world's leader in some obscure category. That's why I was intrigued by a recent article on traveltrivia.com that detailed 17 U.S. towns that proclaim to be the fill-in-the-blank capital of the world.
And about 12 of them were in Texas, right?
Well, no, not really. No. But let's
They will
start.
be
Actually,
shortly.
we're going to start way up in the northeast corner of the country in Farmington, Maine.
Wow.
Farmington, Maine claims to be the earmuff capital of the world.
That's great.
Is there
The basis for their claim is that local 15-year-old Chester Greenwood invented the first earmuff out of farm wire and beaver fur back in 1873, and just 3 years later, he received a patent for his invention. Well, who says kids are in trouble these days?
My
Back in the,
lobes are closed.
yeah.
These days, back in the
Well,
1800s.
okay, 1873. Yeah, good old Chester. He was putting his mind to something to help out humanity. Farmington is now proudly known as the earmuff capital of the world. And on the first Saturday of December, the town celebrates Chester Greenwood Day. So thank you, Chester.
Ooh, golf clap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. And then there's Green Bay, Wisconsin. Famously known as being the smallest city with a major sports franchise, the Green Bay Packers. But you might not know that Green Bay is also the toilet paper capital of the world.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
In the early 1930s, the Northern Paper Company put Green Bay on the toilet paper map by manufacturing the first splinter-free toilet paper. Yes.
No scars or issues here.
Earlier versions had actual wooden splinters because of the way toilet paper was manufactured. Yikes. Never mind about the good old days. The factory also helped Green Bay fare better during the Great Depression than most other towns and cities. Okay. So Green Bay, the toilet paper capital of the world.
Did you know that you could get out most splinters with duct tape?
Oh, these are related.
I don't. Hey, honey, I need you to get a splinter out.
Where's the duct tape?
Moving right along.
Anyway, then there's Washington, Missouri, a.k.a. the corncob pipe capital of the world.
Oh, I like that.
In 1869, a Dutch immigrant named Henry Tibbe, T-I-B-B-E, made a smoking pipe out of a corncob for a friend. The idea became so popular that Tibbe eventually opened a small factory. Today, this factory, now known as Missouri Meerschaum, is the only company in the world that still makes corncob pipes.
Oh, cool. I have my husband's great-grandfather's corncob pipe.
Really?
On my bookshelf, yes.
I believe General Douglas MacArthur was well known for smoking a corncob pipe. So anyway, there's the corncob pipe capital of the world, Washington, Missouri. Some other cities mentioned in the article are Castroville, California, the artichoke capital of the world.
They can keep it.
Yeah. Scottsboro, Alabama, the lost luggage capital of the world. That's where when your airlines lose your luggage, that's where they send it to, and there's a store there that sells your belongings. Seriously.
Did they open an eBay shop? I mean,
no, they do. I think it's open to only employees of the airline industry.
No, it's open to the public, I believe.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, open to the public, yeah.
Interesting.
And then there's New Smyrna Beach, Florida, the shark attack capital of the world. I'm not sure that's where they're going to pack the tourists in, but La Crosse, Kansas, the barbed wire capital of the world. And this one surprised me. Barberton, Ohio, the fried chicken capital of the world. I thought
road
fried
trip.
chicken was more of a southern thing, but what do I know? But perhaps my favorite one goes to Cedar Springs, Michigan, the red flannel capital of the world. In 1936, a New York newspaper column lamented the country's shortage of red flannel during a particularly cold winter. However, a newspaper in Cedar Springs, a booming lumber town whose residents sported the iconic lumberjack look on just about every street corner, challenged the claim and asserted there was plenty to go around. Orders reportedly flooded in from around the country, and 3 years later, in the fall of 1939, Cedar Springs celebrated the first Red Flannel Day.
Red and green show.
The tradition, the tradition continues to this day with a popular festival that takes place during the last weekend of September and the first weekend of October. So there's your travel plans for you. I'm thinking Remnant Stew road trip to experience a few of these world capitals in their greatness, don't you think?
Yes, we'll go right to the toilet paper capital, the flannel capital. Yes.
End up in some fried chicken.
There you go.
You would think Kentucky would be the fried chicken capital. I guess
yeah,
not.
It's the Colonels, yeah. That's worldwide known, you know.
It's thee who claimed first.
I guess. Yes.
All right, now back to our legal lunacy. This is an interesting one. I wonder how this played out during the pandemic, because it's actually illegal to wear a mask in public in Denmark. I bet they had to make some changes during the pandemic times. Not only masks, the Danish government wants to stop anyone from covering their face in any way in public spaces. This includes masks, helmets, scarves, hats, fake beards, and even burqas. The controversial ban went into effect in August 2018.
Oh, that's pretty recent.
Yeah. Officials claim the ban helps to properly identify people during crowded events, should anything negative happen and someone need to be identified. So
I wonder if that has to do with technology, like cameras and stuff.
Cameras are everywhere, I would think.
That's right.
Right. All right, now, it's illegal to fly a kite in Victoria, Australia.
Okay.
Well,
Australia, in Australia's southeastern tip, Victoria, home to Melbourne, it is illegal to fly a kite in a public space if it bothers another person.
Oh.
In fact, you cannot even play a game in a public place if it annoys someone else. This seems odd to me, as Australia is one of the least crowded locations on the planet. You should be able to locate a place to fly your kite without bothering someone. Of course, there's always those people who would go out of their way to be bothered by your experience. So.
True.
So you never know. Now, this is an interesting one. In France, men must wear Speedos to swim in a pool.
Okay.
Now,
That's
there's
interesting.
It has to be Speedo or just clothes?
No, it has to be Speedos. Now, there is some logic behind it. You might think the French just really like Speedos, but actually the French law that men are not allowed to wear loose-fitting swim trunks on beaches, swimming pools, or other public places where a swimsuit is required attire. The law wasn't for safety, but rather pool cleanliness. They figured that men wouldn't dare walk around town in a Speedo, as if he wears a Speedo in the water, it surely would be cleaner than something he has been wearing all day long. In other words, you might be wearing your boxer-style trunks while you poke around town, and then those might get dusty or dirty and thus foul up the pool water. So this need to avoid clothing that could have been worn throughout the day also extends to T-shirts. You'll need to lose those as fast as your surfer shorts. So
I've kind of seen that, like in public pools or whatever. They don't allow you here, here in the States, they don't allow you to wear T-shirts and stuff like that because of the fabric softener and the chemicals and stuff in your clothes. And anyway.
Now, speaking of clothing in France, I had a funny story. We were in France 3 years ago, and one day we were kind of tired in the evening, so we turned on the local television news, even though we don't understand French, just to see what it was like. And they were doing an article on a nudist colony. Now, in the United States, if they would do an article on the nudist colony, they would blur out the middle portion of the person's body, but you would see their face. In France, they blurred out their face.
That's
see everything else but their face.
Oops.
Now, speaking of being shirtless, next to France is Spain, and in Barcelona, Spain, it is illegal to go without your shirt. In an effort to keep the streets of Barcelona free from beachgoers in bikinis and men going shirtless, lawmakers in the Spanish town on the Mediterranean banned anyone from being topless or in a swimming suit in public anywhere except for the beach or pool. Passed in 2011, fines for walking around half naked could cost you up to €260. Oh yeah, speaking of Spanish beaches, it's illegal to build a sandcastle in Spain. I don't know if that maybe contributes to beach erosion or something.
Wow.
But Spain despises your attempts at making sandcastles so much you could be fined if caught building one. And the fines vary by location at their discretion. On the island of Mallorca, for example, you could pay €100, but you could pay up to €1,500 in the city of Galicia. So before you ask, yes, even kids are included in this law. And the kids' parents would have to foot the bill if their kids are building sandcastles on the beach. Seems kind of, in Spain where they had that festival, the men jumping over the babies in the street.
Okay, so I kept waiting.
Episodes.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I kept waiting for you to come up with is there an explanation for this? Was some lawmaker just really ticked off at
maybe it was causing beach erosion is the only thing I can figure, but I don't know.
Interesting. Now, I know that down in Galveston, they have this huge competition every year. When I worked for an engineering firm, a structural engineering firm,
right?
They would go down there, and we would represent them. They had sandcastle competitions, and a lot of the times they mix the sand with starch to keep it keep them. It's a whole lot easier to build a sandcastle, a large sculpture with starched. Anyway, so I don't know if that has anything to do with it. That's interesting, though.
All right, tell us another story, Leah.
Okay, so here we go. On January 6th of 1982. Harold Bray was flying out of the Denver airport in the middle of a snowstorm. After takeoff and just before the plane ascended into the thick clouds, Harold looked out the window and noticed something very odd. Harold was the sheriff of the local county, so he's very familiar with roads and terrain he was seeing outside of his window, and he knew they were flying over a 22-mile stretch of road that cut through the Rocky Mountains called Guanella Pass. Harold was aware that while the road was very beautiful in the summer and springtime, it was not maintained in the winter months. So snow was never plowed off that road, and no one should have been out on Guanella Pass in the winter, much less in the middle of a snowstorm. Right. But as Harold looked out the airplane window, he definitely saw headlights on the road below, and as the airplane was just about to fly over the vehicle, the headlights, Harold saw that whoever was in the vehicle was holding a flashlight out the window and shining it straight up into the sky at the plane, flashing it on and off. They were signaling distress. He knew that the chance of anyone else seeing those lights and knowing it to be an emergency was very slim, so he had to do something.
Oh.
Harold got the attention of the flight attendant. He told her who he was and explained about the emergency. The attendant then took him to the cockpit where then he explained to the pilots what the situation was. They relayed the information to the tower, who contacted the local authorities, and the fire department was dispatched to Guanella Pass. Just minutes after he saw, 15 minutes after he saw this, the fire marshal pulled up. His name was, I'm not the fire marshal, the fire chief, Dave Montoya, pulled up alongside the stranded truck that had apparently gotten stuck in a snowbank.
Right.
Inside was 30-year-old Denver area mechanic Alan Phillips. Quote, "Sure as heck, there he was in his little pickup, and he saw me and said, 'Oh, God, I'm saved,'" Montoya later told a local news station. Quote, "He said he got very drunk and decided to drive home, and I said, 'You came up over the pass?' And he said, 'Well, it seemed like a good idea.' I thought, how in the heck did this guy get so lucky for all of this stuff to fall into place for him to be rescued, right?"
Right.
Alan was overcome with emotion at being rescued from the snowstorm in the middle of the night where the temperatures dipped down to just 22 degrees Fahrenheit, so well below freezing.
Yeah.
He only had a light jacket, jeans, and a small blanket, so if the sheriff had not happened to see his flashlight SOS, it's almost certain that Alan would have died of hypothermia that night.
Oh, wow.
At the time of the rescue, Fire Chief Montoya noticed a really deep bruise on Alan's face and asked him about it. Alan said, and this is funny, that after being stuck in the snowbank for a while, he had to relieve himself. So he left the truck and walked a short distance away. He did his business, but when he was returning back to his truck, the snow was so blinding that he couldn't see where he was going. He panicked and began running and ran straight into his truck face first.
Oh, ouch.
Hold on. Throughout the next week, several stories were written up in local papers and even in national news about the miracle at Guanella Pass.
Right.
However, 38 years later, as people had nearly forgotten the unlikely rescue story, more information came to light that brought that story back to headlines in a very shocking and disturbing way.
Oh, no.
It turns out that Alan had lied about why he was on the isolated and dangerous mountain road. Earlier in the evening, he had actually murdered 2 hitchhikers, roughly 50 miles from where he would be rescued. Both hitchhikers were women who worked in the area and were both later found dead. Their murders had gone cold. But
not because of the past.
Oh, right.
Pun intended, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Their murders had gone cold, but in late 2020, DNA evidence connected Alan to both cases. And I think in one of the cases, they used familial DNA, which means they found, they took DNA from one of the women And it never said if there was sexual assault involved,
Right.
but
Right.
I'm assuming maybe it was. But that's where they take the DNA and then they take it to like 23andMe or whatever,
Right,
and they find family related to right. Several hours before he was rescued from the snowstorm, Alan had picked up 22-year-old hitchhiker Annette Schnee. A few days later, she was reported missing, and eventually her body would be found deep in the woods where she had been shot. Apparently, Alan's murderous tendencies weren't sated because he then picked up another hitchhiker, 29-year-old Barbara Oberholzer, and he did the same thing to her that he had done earlier to Annette. He held her at gunpoint and put her in zip-tie handcuffs. Barbara, however, was able to break out of her restraints, and she fought back, striking Alan in the face, which is why he had a bruise on his cheek that night. She jumped out of the car and started running, but Alan caught up to her, shot her in the chest, then dumped her off the side of a cliff into a snowbank below. The only reason Alan had gotten caught in the Guanilla Pass area was because he was attempting to flee the area after the murders.
Oh, wow.
In February of 2021, so just a few months ago, Alan, who was 70 years old at the time and still living in the Denver area, was finally arrested for these two murders and is currently awaiting trial.
Wow.
And it's interesting because in the true crime, if you listen and read to, this is called the age of judgment, or the age of justice. Sorry, justice. Okay. Because of the DNA advancements and what they're doing, because things that you may have thought you got away with 38 years ago, 40 years ago, is coming back to haunt you.
Wow.
Anyway, I got my information from this really cool podcast called Mr. Ballin Podcast. It's episode number 47, The Hitchhikers, and from a May 2021 Associated Press article.
It's really interesting. Had he not been flashing his flashlight at the airplane, and the sheriff would just happen to be sitting at the window looking out and knowing the area, knowing that, hey, nobody should be out there, that's really, a bizarre connection to the whole thing, because otherwise he would have died out there too. And so
it still would have remained. Yeah, it still would have remained. Well, I don't know if it would have remained unsolved with the familial DNA.
Longer, but it would have been eventually solved.
Yeah, but there would have been no justice. I mean, well, I guess there would have been swift, cold justice.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
Put an ice pack on it.
Yeah.
But it's I like the idea that eventually catches up to you. For sure.
Yes.
All right. How about some more strange laws in different places? We were in Spain just a little bit ago. Here's another one from Spain. It's illegal to play dominoes in Sevilla, Spain.
That's just sad.
Another place trying to combat noise pollution in weird ways is the city of Sevilla. The beautiful city prevents people from playing dominoes in public, allegedly because the pieces make too much noise when they clink as players put them down. I've been in some wild domino games. So
they're tossing them around like crazy.
We don't understand the reasoning, how given Sevilla is a lively town where live music is played in the streets and flamenco dancers put on shows in public spaces. So there seems like a lot of noises from those places. I'm not sure the dominoes are really all that bothersome, but I guess they think so.
Beat.
Now, going to the United Kingdom, it is illegal to wear a suit of armor in Parliament.
Okay.
I know that's something you've probably been dying to do, but you can't do that.
It's very chivalrous.
When you visit Parliament, you don't forget that you cannot do that. Still, there is this ancient law dating back to 1313 that prohibits it. Of course, the Brits could revoke the law, but as armor really isn't all that fashionable as it was back in the Middle Ages, why should they bother?
So this is your packing list, do's and don'ts, right?
Don't take your chainmail and your suit of armor.
Buy a Speedo
on your day, right? Put Speedo to France, yes.
No Winnie the Pooh shirts, right?
No Winnie the Pooh shirts, right? By the way, while you're visiting Parliament, you really want to be careful that you don't die there, because that's illegal too. Don't even think about dying inside the House of Parliament.
How do they fine you for that one?
Well, that's what we're not really sure how they would, what your consequence would be. But because the building is considered a royal family palace, if anyone dies inside it, they must be buried with full honors. We're not really sure how many people were planning to die there, but we guess they wanted to be sure.
If you're gonna go, I mean,
they're going to rush you out. They're going to pick you up and run you out the door.
Throw you out into the Thames River out there.
Throw them over the fence. Over the fence.
Now, speaking of dying, this is an interesting one. It is illegal to reincarnate without permission in China.
And whose
How do you get
permission?
The government's permission. The Tibetan Buddhist monks are not allowed to reincarnate after they die unless they have been granted permission from the government.
You can come back, but no.
Now, we're not quite sure how they enforce this, but China is known for having some pretty strict laws, as we've seen in the news lately.
I'm going to go ahead and vote that one as the weirdest law.
Yeah.
Right there. Let's see if we can outdo it.
I don't know. Chess. The dominoes are chess pieces.
Now, speaking of China, it's by law you must provide for your elderly parents in China.
Well, I like that one.
Yeah, the family structure is very important to East Asians. The protection of the rights and interests of elderly people over the age of 60 include. Wait a minute, I'm 64. I don't call myself elderly, but anyway, include a number of requirements for children when it comes to their elderly parents. You may not forsake or insult your parents. You must take care of their farm for them, and you must provide for them, among other laws. If not, parents can actually request alimony from their children.
Interesting.
We really appreciate all of our listeners, and if you really enjoy podcasts, here's another one that you might be interested in.
This is John Brassard Jr., the Kitchen Table Historian. Despite what the name might imply, this is not a podcast about food. At my table, I'm going to tell you the stories that your grandma didn't want you to hear. You'll be served tales of mass murder, family annihilators, and long-forgotten homicides, not to mention stories of ghosts, legends, and the paranormal. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and all of your other favorite podcatchers. So take a seat, make yourself comfortable. Do we have a story to tell you?
September 1978. Serial killer Rodney Alcala appears on The Dating Game.
February 1994. 34 hospital workers are exposed to an unexplained toxic lady.
March 2022. Experian emails a Los Angeles podcaster about a mysterious credit score change, completely unjustified.
Wait, did we cover that?
I mean, we could have. I said it was mysterious.
Okay. We're Ghost Town, and we cover true crime, paranormal, and other weird history.
The Cult of Capital One.
But here's one more date. July 2018. A trailer drops for a new podcast called Ghost Town. Over 300 episodes later, we've covered everything from the Los Feliz murder house to the Noid.
Ever hear of the Tetris murders or the Denver Spider-Man or the underground satanic magazine Tuesday's Child?
Didn't think so. We've got stories you won't hear anywhere else by two writers, producers, and comedians.
We're LA 4s, but Wisconsin 7s.
Hey, I'm from Wisconsin. Oh. I'm Rebecca Lieb.
I'm Jason Horton.
And this is Ghost Town.
Available every Wednesday and Friday. Pause
the podcast you're listening to right now and subscribe to Ghost Town.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
You're a Wisconsin 8.
All right, now let's have a few more loony laws here. In the country of Cambodia, New Year's can be a fun time, but evidently things were getting out of hand at one point because they've now made a law that no water pistols are allowed during New Year's celebration in Cambodia. I guess it got so crazy in the capital city of Siam Reap, they won't allow the sale of water pistols leading up to and during the big celebration. The ban went into place to prevent traffic accidents and public disorder. Apparently, any other time of the year is okay for the water gun fight, but if you plan to go to New Year's, shop owners won't even sell you a water pistol there.
So buy them the day before.
Now, in the UAE, in the United Arab Emirates, it is illegal to swear. This is a Muslim-dominated country, the United Arab Emirates. Swearing could get you fined, jailed, or deported. Under Article 373 of the UAE Penal Code, quote, swearing disgraces the honor the modesty of a person. Well, I'd kind of agree with that.
That's pretty good.
This isn't just for saying inappropriate words. It also includes indecent physical gestures and extends to your text messages and social media as well.
Oh, wow.
Not even indecent emojis are allowed. Earlier this year, in 2022, the British Express reported a man sent an angry message to a car dealer who seemingly did him wrong. He was threatened with 3 weeks in jail for his choice of words. So if you have a potty mouth, be sure to keep it in check before you visit the UAE.
That's really interesting because I'm sure that's hard to regulate because raising 3 boys, they come up with their own words.
Right.
It may not be,
but
something everybody else.
offshoot.
Yeah, that
right.
Well, okay, so they came up with the word ever. Like,
Ever.
we say ever, but they would ever, ever, and it was a cuss word to them. It was, anyway. So it's interesting because if you really want to be profane, you're going to find a way.
Right.
So
I had a friend that used to say muddy duck when well, never mind. Let's go on. It's illegal to dance in the dark after midnight in Japan. Japan was like the country version of the movie Footloose. Dancing after midnight was banned for generations as it is just too sinful. Well, actually, it's really just too American. This law was enacted in 1948 while the United States soldiers were occupying Japan, and the ban was placed to stop liberal Americans from corrupting the good citizens of Japan. Lawmakers finally lifted the ban in 2015. You can now dance after midnight as long as it's not in the dark.
okay.
Revelers wanting to get their groove on after the clock strikes 12 need to do it in a well-lit nightclub. Oh, yes, and while you're at the club, be sure not to indulge in too much pub grub because it is illegal to be overweight in Japan
Oh, wow.
unless you are a sumo wrestler. They have an exemption, I guess. In an effort to prevent obesity in its citizens, Japan created the Matabo Law. This requires people between the ages of 40 to 74 to have an annual waist measurement performed at the doctor. Fines will be incurred if men have waist sizes over 33.5 inches. Ooh, I'm kind of pushing that there.
Uh-oh.
Or women, 35.4 inches. So be careful about eating too much in Japan. And
Wow.
Speaking of dancing in clubs, Scandinavian bars need a license to allow dancing on their premises.
Okay.
If you're in an Arctic country and feel inspired to spontaneously break into dance, we have bad news for you. Unless the bar or lounge that you're in has a dancing license, it is illegal to move your body to the songs they are playing. Why this law exists is anyone's guess. The worst part is that the law is actually strictly enforced. All right, Leah, tell us another story.
Okay. How about something strange in the neighborhood? In the late...
You've been to my neighborhood, haven't you?
And listen, I feel like in this episode, you've been like all the fun and everything, and
Yes.
I've been the downer. And this is kind of a fun story, kind
Okay.
of. In the late 1960s, George and Helen Ackley set out to find a spacious waterfront home for themselves and their 4 children. They found their dream home in a somewhat run-down, vacant 1890s era Victorian mansion built atop a cliff overlooking the Hudson River. The Ackleys fell in love with the 5,000 square foot home featuring.
Man, it was a big place.
Yeah, it was a big
That's a good
place.
place.
And it had intricate woodwork and a beautiful view.
Yes. But there's something fishy about it already.
Yep.
There
It's
is.
gotta
Listen,
be too good.
Yeah.
after buying the house, they loved the house the whole time that they were there. I'm just going to give you that. After buying the house, though, they noticed that the locals weren't as in love with the property as they were. The neighborhood children passed on to the Ackley children that their new home was haunted.
Of course, why not?
George and Helen didn't pay much attention to the rumors, assuring their kids that it was all just made-up stories about an old fixer-upper type house, but soon they changed their minds.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
According to several articles Helen submitted to the Reader's Digest magazine, the family started to hear phantom footsteps, mysterious knockings, and the doors around the house would slam from time to time all on their own. They became convinced that the house was inhabited by 3 separate ghosts. I'm not sure exactly how they came to this. I didn't look into it that
Different
clearly.
identities, yeah.
But there was an unnamed Navy lieutenant from the American Revolution
Okay.
and a married couple from the 18th century named Sir George and Lady Margaret.
Did they ask?
Okay.
I don't know if they conversed. Again, I didn't go
Yeah,
into
Yeah.
great detail of how they came up with this. Several members of the family, though, reportedly saw these apparitions face to face. So it wasn't
Oh,
just
wow.
it wasn't just them living
Yeah.
there, but like one of their daughters had her fiance living there for a while. And he saw them, and other people that would visit would see these apparitions as well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just the family. Some of the strange happenings over the years that they lived in the house include small gifts that the Ackley children and grandchildren would receive, such as coins, rings, and other trinkets, and then those objects would later disappear entirely. Helen would recount how her daughter Cynthia would be awoken by the shaking of her bed almost every morning. And a funny thing is that Cynthia would say, "Listen, I'm on spring break, quit," and the ghost would quit for that week. Isn't that funny?
That
Oh,
was
wow.
weird.
So anyway, it seems that the Ackley family lived, though, mostly in harmony with the ghosts in their house. But in the early 1990s, Helen, who was now widowed and whose children had grown up and moved on, decided to sell the large house. She entered into a contract with buyer Jeffrey Stambovsky, I think that's his name, Stambovsky, who agreed to the price of $650,000 and a $32,500 down payment was made.
Yeah.
But when Mr. Stambovsky found out about the poltergeist, he was not so keen on living with them and attempted to back out of the sale. He sued Ackley and a real estate broker for fraudulent misrepresentation and requested a rescission of the contract of sale. When the initial, because I guess when you make a down payment, that is a contract.
Yeah,
Right.
you're
5% down. So
you're legally bound to buy that
purchase.
house.
Yes.
So when the initial action was dismissed, he appealed to a higher court. And in 1991, the appellate division of the New York Supreme Court made a basic conclusion that whether or not the ghosts were real, the fact that the hauntings were reported and publicized affected the value of the house. So therefore, the house was declared legally haunted.
Oh, wow.
It was ruled that Helen was not liable for damages, that Mr. Stambovsky was allowed to back out of the purchase of the house, but he did forfeit the down payment.
Oh, okay.
This became famously known as the Ghostbusters ruling. Following this ruling, laws, which vary state to state, have been enacted to protect buyers from what is referred to in the real estate business as, quote, stigmatized property.
Okay, that's an interesting term.
According to Wikipedia, a stigmatized property, which is a really interesting term to use in this case. But anyway, a stigmatized property is a property that buyers or tenants may shun for reasons that are unrelated to physical condition or features. These can include death of an occupant, murder, suicide, and belief that a house is haunted.
I see.
I got my information from Wikipedia and from an HEIN.org blog. And just as a footnote, Amityville, the house in the Amityville Horror, that is an actual house.
Yes.
And it's been occupied ever since that whole thing. And the house, so the house, even though it had the movie and everything made from it, it actually had murders committed in it that supposedly caused these hauntings. 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo Jr. shot and killed 6 members of his family in that house on November 13th, 1974.
Right.
And according to a 2021 article in the New York Post, the house has been on the market only 4 different times since the murders.
Yeah.
It was last listed in June of 2016 and sold in March 2017 for $605,000.
Wow.
And it's a beautiful house. And if you look at it, they changed the iconic windows because it's a very recognizable house with those quarter round windows on the eave, and they've changed it, but it's still everybody knows it's that house.
What it is,
yeah.
All right, let's get back to some loony laws now. We were in the Nordic countries just a little bit ago, and let's stay there. In the country of Finland, by law, taxi drivers must pay royalty fees for songs they play in their cars.
That's not good.
You know, whenever you get into a cab, it's normal for the taxi driver to be listening to the radio as a way to make the ride a little more pleasant for everyone. In Finland, however, taxi drivers are required by law to pay royalty fees for songs they play while driving passengers. The logic of the law is that they're using the song for business while making a profit, so they must pay for the rights. Well, I'm all for intellectual property protection, That seems fair, but it seems maybe it's gone like a little bit too far. So we're here ready to make an announcement right here at Remnant Stew. For all taxi drivers in Finland, you may broadcast Remnant Stew podcast for free. Yes, that's right. We said for free. We will not charge you any royalties at all. And your
and if you're looking for a podcast to sponsor.
That's right. Now, if you're in Italy, if you live in Italy, you must walk your dog. Yes, that's a law. In Rome, there are strict laws against animal cruelty that include walking of pet dogs. If an owner does not walk their dog at least once a day at a minimum, they can be fined $625.
Wow.
The law extends to goldfish as well. No, they're not going to be walked, but they have to have room to swim.
Okay.
Goldfish are not allowed to be kept in one of those small bowls. They have to have a full-size aquarium. So cruelty to the fish there. Now, if you do not walk your dog at least 3 times a day in the Italian city of Turin, be prepared to face a fine of up to 500 euros. It's also a crime to dye a dog's hair for aesthetics, so no pink poodles there.
You know what they say?
Au naturel.
If your dog is fat, you need more exercise.
Uh-huh. Now, we haven't really talked about the continent of Africa, so let's take a little dip there. The East African nation of Malawi, it is illegal to pass wind in public.
Okay.
It's called the air fouling legislation of 2011.
You smell it, you find it?
Yeah, that's right. It makes it illegal for the people of Malawi to foul the air. So that I think that's not a bad law, honestly.
You know what? Okay, so all of these laws were made because there was a problem.
Right?
Yes.
Well, let's see about this one now. Down in the South American country of Bolivia, married women can only have 1 glass of wine.
Well, now.
Now here we... Oh,
you said something about a problem. I don't know. But if you're a single woman in La Paz, Bolivia, drink up. But if you're married, it's just 1 glass of wine for you. This sexist law is due to the belief that alcohol may make women more immoral. A husband could actually divorce her if she's drinking in public.
Oh, my goodness. What century are they living in?
And finally... Say this
drum
one
roll,
for last.
please.
You mentioned this was these came from a need. I'm not really sure where the need is here, but it is illegal to wear lace panties in Russia.
For men and women, or just
I think it's really directed at the women, but sorry, ladies, our gents too, I suppose. But Russia doesn't want you wearing anything lacy underneath your clothing. A 2014 law in Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan states undergarments must be made with a minimum of 6% of cotton. Why? They claim it's for health and safety. While women across the nation protested, the law is in effect and you can no longer buy lacy garments. Now, how they know what you're wearing underneath is another subject, I guess, another place with some pretty tight restrictions.
Wow.
Interesting. Okay.
That's pretty weird.
And now it's time, boys and girls, for the Trivia Challenge.
All right, calm down, crowd. It's time for the Trivia Challenge. You know how this works. Like and follow our Facebook page at Remnant Stew Podcast. Like and share this episode post. Put your answer to the Trivia Challenge question in the comments of that post. The first person to do all of that will be the winner, and will be mentioned in an upcoming episode of Remnant Stew. However, we're doing something a little bit new.
Dun, dun, dun.
We are opening our Trivia Challenge up to school kids. That's right. Pay attention there, kids. Get that. Put that gum away. Stop bothering her. If your classroom listens to Remnant Stew and they want to answer the trivia question and send us an email with their answer to staycurious@remnantstew.com, if your class wins, we'll send a nice little care package to the class. Oh, that's exciting.
That's cool.
And I just have to say that while this episode might not be quite classroom friendly, our next one is about pirates, and the kids will
bring
love
it.
That one. Yeah. Yeah, because we're getting back into school starting time now.
That's right. So this question came from Harbin Gold. This serial killer from India, due to the country's laws, will not be able to be sentenced to prison or death due to its age until he turns 18. What is his name and how old was he when he committed his first crime?
Wow.
Ooh, wow.
Okay, folks, thanks for spending some time with us. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Remnant Stew Podcast. You can also send us an email to say hi or suggest a topic for a future episode at staycurious@remnantstew.com. We want and would love to hear from you.
Remnant Stew is created by me, Leah Lamp. Dr. Stephen Meeker and I research, write, and host each episode, along with commentary by our audio producer, Philip Sinquefield. Theme music is by Kevin MacLeod with a voiceover by Morgan Hughes, and special thanks goes out to Judy Meeker and Harbin Gold.
Now, before you go, please hit the follow button so you won't miss an episode. head on over to Apple Music and leave us a review. Oh, we love reading those reviews. Share Remnant Stew with your friends, family, your parole officer, the prison warden, and your cellmate. And until next time, remember, choose to be kind
and always stay curious.